In theory, they have problems. I don't know if we're going to do anything about that. So we have other things to do, but they were working other jobs instead of working for us. So they were staying home working, but they were working other jobs, getting paid a lot of money, perhaps. We offered deferred resignation buyouts to all federal workers, resulting in more than 75,000 bureaucrats voluntarily surrendering their taxpayer-funded jobs. A lot of them are leaving because they don't want to be caught having the second job. Some are leaving because they didn't want to be in government any longer. And some are leaving because they didn't want to show up to work. They wanted to work outside of an office. And that's never going to work for anybody, including companies. Companies ought to get smart. You watch these companies where they do that. They start going bad. Nobody knows what's wrong with this company. Well, try getting the people back into the office where they can be cohesive and together. In less than a single month, the Department of Government Efficiency has already saved over this is just a short period of time, $55 billion. And we're just getting started. That's nothing compared to the numbers that you're talking about, right? We're ending trillions of dollars in waste, and it'll mean much lower inflation, lower interest rates, lower payments on mortgages, credit cards, car loans, and much higher stock markets. I think the stock market's going to be great. In other words, we will rapidly grow our economy by dramatically shrinking the federal government, and we have to do it. I'm also taking fast action to end the radical left's nation-wrecking crusade against oil and natural gas. Over the past 4 years, the Biden administration cut the number of new oil leases and gas leases by 95%. They slowed new pipeline. I mean, look at Dakota Access, they wanted that one knocked out. The Keystone Pipeline, they wanted that one knocked out. They ended the Keystone. We got the Dakota Access done, but it wasn't easy after they tried to stop it. They slowed new oil and gas pipeline construction to virtually a halt. They shut down 38% of active oil and gas rigs in the United States, but they love the wind turbines. They go round and round and round, and if the wind doesn't blow, they got problems. They kill all the birds. They ruin the sight lines. They ruin the plains and the beautiful areas of our country, including the oceans, the lakes. They closed more than 50 power plants, all causing energy prices to skyrocket. You saw that happen. That's what caused inflation. Pretty easy. These policies were so destructive that despite draining nearly 40% of U.S. strategic petroleum reserve meant for emergencies, it was meant for emergencies. It wasn't meant for getting a price of gasoline down so that you can win an election. It didn't work for winning the election. Actually, there's so many people that are driving that it's a very small number, just had a very small effect, but in the meantime, it takes it down. We'll fill it up fast, but it's at the lowest level. When we made the transition, it was at the lowest level in history, ever recorded. It's the lowest level. Nobody's ever seen it that way. They put it all out because they thought they could keep gasoline prices down a little bit, just go past the election, and after that, they didn't care. And it didn't work because they didn't get elected. I got elected. But the price of gasoline still rose over 35%, and in some cases, at some periods, it was 100% and 125% during certain periods of time. Under the Trump administration, we have implemented a very different plan. You probably heard of it. It's called Drill, Baby, Drill. And we're doing it. The world runs on low-cost energy, and energy-producing nations like us have nothing to apologize for. We have more energy than any other nation in the world, and we're going to use it. And we're going to use it on AI plants. I was telling some of the people that came in that, they're very into, everybody's talking about AI. I hope you're right. I don't know, who knows. But Elon, are they right? Are they right in going they are all in for AI? But the problem is, to do it, just in our country, you need twice the electricity just to open up and be the top of AI. You need twice the electricity that we have right now in the entire country. If you take all of the electricity, you need more than twice. You need double what we have right now just to fuel this new industry that's growing. I was amazed when I heard that number. And they all said, how can we do this? Because, in China and various other places, you can probably get it with the shake of a hand. But in our country, you can't. But now you can, because I'm declaring a national emergency in order to get fast approvals. And we're going to have, if you build a plant, you're able to build an electric generating facility right next to your plant. So you'll be making your own. You won't have to count on utilities. You won't have to count on an old grid that could fail, could get hit by something, bad things or good things. But you're not going to have to worry about grids. You'll build your plant, and you'll build essentially you'll become a utility in a way. You'll build your own electricity. If you want to build extra and put it out and get paid for that, you're going to be able to do that. You could put it back into the grid, but you're going to be able to build with your plant a generating facility. And we're going to get you Lee Zeldin, head of the environmental group, various groups, and we've got them unified now, but we're going to get you very fast approvals, and they'll be approved so fast your head will spin. And we're going to get that whole industry started, and we're going to be the head of it. We're leading right now. We have the greatest brain power. We're leading right now, and I expect that we're going to be leading by a lot, but we're going to get you the energy very, very quickly. That would be the one thing that everybody was concerned. How do we have that much electricity when Los Angeles has blackouts and brownouts right now? And there's a lack of electricity, but we're going to get it at levels never seen before. I ended the ridiculous Green New scam, halting tens of billions of dollars of wasteful deficit spending. And I withdrew the United States from the unfair, one-sided Paris Climate Accord, and I ended Joe Biden's insane electric vehicle mandate because it was just insane. I repealed the last, and by the way, if you want to buy an electric car, it's great. If you want to buy a gasoline-driven car or a hybrid, it's great. Whatever the thing happens to be. I heard hydrogen's hot. The problem is when it's not, you're in deep trouble, because when that sucker blows up, they don't find the body. So that's one that I said, you know what, let's take a pass on that one. They said it's good, but when it's bad, it's really bad. You find the bodies on trees, on the side of a tree. I said, I think we'll pass on that one, right? We're not going to want that one. But you never know. Maybe someday it'll be good, but it doesn't sound like it's off to a good start. I repealed the last administration's very destructive natural gas export ban. And last week we approved our first new liquefied natural gas export license. And we have literally hundreds of people that want to export. I recently met with the Japanese Prime Minister, Shiba, to discuss large increases in American oil and gas exports. They want it so badly. They said we went to the Biden administration, they wouldn't sell it. They wouldn't sell it. Nobody knows why. Biden didn't know why either. They asked him, I don't know. They did, oh, I didn't know that. But we're going to sell it. And the new project in Alaska is going to feed all of Asia. We're going to take care of all of Asia. We have so much oil and gas, like very few people, like very few countries have, like really actually no country has. I also met with Prime Minister Modi of India, who wants to greatly expand India's purchase of American energy, and my administration has also launched the most aggressive deregulation program of any nation in history. Under my executive order, for every one new regulation added, 10 old regulations have to be eliminated. And you know, in our first term, which was actually an incredible success, we had the greatest economy in history until COVID, and even after that, we did great. The stock market was higher. If you think of it, it was higher after the fact. After we went through that whole thing, it was higher than it was just prior to COVID coming in, which is a pretty amazing thing. But we did a great job on that, but it was a terrible thing for the world. The whole world suffered. It suffered terribly, including China, including other countries. It was a terrible period of time. But despite that, we did well. But we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I think this time we're going to do even better. We were artificially hurt by COVID. We had to focus on that instead of focusing on, but just prior to COVID coming in, there's never been anything like what we did, what we achieved. And even after, we did very well, and especially considering what all of us had to do with COVID. Some nations were hit so badly, it's just unbelievable what happened to them. As part of our effort, I've signed executive orders to keep the United States at the forefront of artificial intelligence and to end Joe Biden's war on Bitcoin and crypto. We ended that war totally. That war is over. They were very hostile toward them until the very end, just because there's so many people on Bitcoin and crypto that just before the end, the SEC came out and they were being very nice. I was so nice to people because so many people were being indicted for no reason whatsoever. Very political group of people. That's all they did was they liked indicting people, but they were being indicted, and many of those indictments were dropped just before the election because they said, wait a minute, there's 100 million, 125 million people using this, and they didn't want to have, you know, all these people being voted against. But by the time they did that, it was too late. We had that vote entirely, I think. I think anybody was smart that believed in that, and there were a lot of people believing it. Anybody that was smart voted for Trump. And they pulled the indictments, and I see people that were indicted. I said, I saved your life. I saved your life. Because if they thought that, they actually thought that I was doing it, they said, why is Trump doing it? Is he doing it for political reasons? I don't do anything for political reasons. I do what's right. I want to be in the forefront of every industry. So I'll be working with the Republican Congress to pass the largest tax cuts in American history. And that includes, obviously, that includes we have to extend the Trump tax cuts, which were, until now, the largest. We're going to dramatically cut taxes for families and for workers and for companies, including no tax on tips and hopefully no tax on Social Security and no tax on overtime. And that overtime one is a sleeper because I think a lot of people are going to be spurred on to do a lot of extra work. When they hear that, it's a lot of companies really like it and a lot of people really like it. The new Trump tax cuts will also include 100% expensing for new factory construction in the United States and anything else that you're going to buy with capital. If you buy something that is going to be good for our country, we're going to let you expense it, 1 year expense. And I did that the first time, and everybody was saying, can you go back to that? Now you still get, I guess, 40% or whatever, but it, you know, pares down. But we're going to bring that right up to the top level. I think that had a lot to do with the success that I had during my first term. And we'll substantially cut taxes for all domestic producers of oil and gas and just about everything else that they produce. In my first term, I brought the business tax down from around 40% to 21%, which everybody said was an impossible thing to do. I cut it from 40. It actually was state and city was much higher than 40, but I got it down to 21%, and now I'm bringing it down to a goal of 15%, but only if you make your product in America. In other words, you're going to be at 21%, but if you make your product in America, you're going to go from 21 to 15. If you don't, you're going to pay 21%, which is still lower than anything. So guys like Elon are going to come and make his great cars in the United States. There are a lot of people will. A lot of people are calling. A lot of car companies are calling. They called me, three of the majors. They called and they said, we're looking all over the place. We want to be there. I'm going to be announcing tariffs on cars and semiconductors and chips and pharmaceuticals, drugs and pharmaceuticals and lumber probably and some other things over the next month or sooner. And it's going to have a big impact on America. We're bringing our businesses back. If they don't make their product in America, then they have to pay a tariff. But if they do make their product in America, they don't have to pay any tariff, which will bring, it's all going to bring trillions of dollars into our treasury, or it's going to mean that there won't be any taxes because we want to have a fair base. If they don't have it, we don't have it. If they don't pay, if they don't charge us, we don't charge them. It's pretty simple. The Republican Party is once again the party of common sense. We're a party of common sense. We want strong borders. We don't want men playing in women's sports. We don't want to have transgender for everybody. We're the party of common sense. That's how we won the election in such a big manner. We'll no longer allow other countries to ransack and plunder our nation. That's why I've announced that we will soon begin imposing reciprocal tariffs on any country that engages in unfair and unequal trading practices. If they tariff us, as I said, we will tariff them at the exact same rate. So if a certain country, because some of these countries, even countries that I've already mentioned, are extremely aggressive with tariffs. Nobody knows that. European Union, they have a VAT tax that's devastating. It's very tough for people on the outside. Hard to sell cars, really impossible to sell them because they also have non-monetary tariffs that are very, very tough. But if you take a look at that, it's a very unfair situation. And the VAT tax is similar to the tariff. Around the world, I'm moving quickly to end wars, settle conflicts, and restore the planet to peace. I want peace, and I don't want to see everybody being killed. And you take a look at the death in the Middle East and the death that's taking place between Russia and Ukraine. It's been going on, and we're going to end it. There's no profit for anyone in having World War III, and you're not so far away from it. I'll tell you right now, you're not so far away. If we would have had this administration for another year, you would have been in World War III, and now it's not going to happen. In the Middle East, I've restored my policy of maximum pressure on Iran, designed to bring peace. And we've designated the Houthis a terrorist organization. They're, destroying shipping lanes all over the place. They're making it very hard for people to get their product delivered. They're making it very difficult, but we'll take care of that situation. And we've secured a ceasefire in Gaza, and we're bringing in the hostages, and we're bringing them home to their families. Some of them are in pretty bad shape, I have to tell you. To end the horrible war in Ukraine, I've spoken with President Putin and President Zelenskyy, and our teams began negotiations this week in Saudi Arabia. I want to thank Saudi Arabia for that. That was so great. Yeah. And I want to thank, in particular, we have so many of the people, Yasser, Mohammed, all of the people, but in particular, we have to thank Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for hosting these historic talks. And talks that went very, very well. Steve was there, Steve Witkoff was there, and Michael was there, Michael Waltz and others, and they really went well. It's a big step. We got to get that war over with. You have to see the people that are dying. I look at the pictures, the satellite pictures of the field. It's a level field, and it looks like a modern-day version of Gettysburg, and you know what that means. It is just carnage. It's horrible. And, it's not American soldiers. It's not even soldiers from the Middle East in the case of Ukraine, Russia, but it's people, it's young people from Russia and Ukraine mostly that are just being decimated. It's flat fields. And a bullet goes, and a bullet only stops when it hits somebody. And the level of people being killed in that battle, soldiers, young soldiers, in some cases old soldiers, because they're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers, one case. But think of it, a modestly successful comedian. President Zelenskyy talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that basically couldn't be won, that never had to start and never would have started if I was president, not even a chance. And it didn't start for 4 years, never would have started. But a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, will never be able to settle. They'll never settle that war without our involvement. That's why they did such a great job this weekend. That's why Saudi Arabia did such a great job this weekend in hosting. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed. They get their money back. It's a form of a loan. Nobody knows that. I know that. I said, why isn't somebody saying, we do it the same way? And we spent much more money. We have to equalize. But while the United States gets nothing back, so they get their money back. It's a loan. We just give our money.
That was President Trump delivering a speech at a tech summit in Miami, Florida. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, the U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine and Russia is in Kyiv. Arian Pasdar has the details on that visit and why President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy exchanged accusations today. A federal judge in New York says the Justice Department's motion to dismiss the indictment against Mayor Eric Adams creates, quote, a very unusual situation. Arlene Richards brings us the key takeaways. The Trump administration moves to end New York City's congestion toll. A lawsuit is already underway. Hear the response from Governor Kathy Hochul. A powerful polar vortex is breaking records, bringing dangerously low temperatures and snowstorms across the country. Several state officials provide updates on the escalating dangerous conditions. Christina Corona has the weather report. And 2 people are killed after 2 small aircraft collide mid-air near Tucson, Arizona. An investigation is underway.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. The special envoy to Ukraine and Russia is in Kyiv today. That's as President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy exchanged strong accusations. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the Ukraine update.
Special envoy to Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, is in Kyiv this week. He already met with some high-ranking officials on Wednesday and is scheduled to sit down with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy as well.
General Kellogg is already in Kyiv. He has met with Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi, our intelligence and special service heads, and the head of my office. Our meeting with General Kellogg is scheduled for tomorrow.
Kellogg's visit to Kyiv comes after he was part of a U.S. delegation that held talks with Russian counterparts in Saudi Arabia. Zelenskyy has repeatedly said the U.S. and Russia can't agree on a peace deal without Ukraine being involved in the talks. Russian President Vladimir Putin said this on Wednesday.
President Trump told me during our phone call that the U.S. assumed that both Russia and Ukraine will take part in the negotiating process. Nobody is excluding Ukraine from this process.
President Trump took to social media on Wednesday, addressing Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Trump wrote that a modestly successful comedian, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion. On top of this, Zelenskyy admits that half of the money we sent him is missing. Trump also called Zelenskyy a dictator without elections. Zelenskyy better move fast, or he's not going to have a country left. Because of the ongoing fighting in Ukraine, the country skipped its presidential elections after Zelenskyy's term expired. On Tuesday night, a reporter asked Trump if Ukraine should hold presidential elections.
We're the leader in Ukraine. I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating. Wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, like, it's been a long time since we've had an election?
On Wednesday, Zelenskyy responded to Trump's comments.
Since we are talking about 4%, we have seen this disinformation. We understand that this is coming from Russia. These numbers are being discussed between America and Russia.
Zelenskyy added that Trump is living, quote, in a Russian disinformation space. But Trump says that the need for elections in Ukraine is not coming from Russia, but rather from the people of Ukraine and other allied countries. Arian Pasdar, NTD News.
A federal judge today carefully considering whether to dismiss a federal indictment against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Judge Dale Ho held a hearing on what he called a very unusual situation. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
New York District Court Judge Daniel Ho carefully considered Wednesday whether or not to dismiss a federal criminal case against Mayor Eric Adams. Just before Ho approached the bench, Adams had solemnly walked into the courtroom, flanked by his attorneys. Trump-appointed acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove appeared for the Justice Department. At the outset of the hearing, Judge Ho said he understood that he has very little discretion to decide whether the indictment should be dismissed or not, and that under federal rules, the government is the first and best judge of whether a case should be dismissed. Nevertheless, he said he needed assistance on sorting out what is a very unusual situation. The Justice Department requested the dismissal based on their understanding that prosecutors were abusing the criminal justice process by charging Adams. Bove said the case has an appearance of impropriety and that continuing it interfered with federal national security and immigration concerns, explaining that Adams' security clearance needed to be restored and that he needed access to sensitive information related to federal immigration policies. Bove also said the case was interfering with Adams' ability to run for mayor. Judge Ho questioned the attorneys on both sides, as well as Adams, about the scope of the dismissal and whether granting it would be contrary to the public interest. He also asked if he should consider third-party filings that accuse the attorneys of engaging in a quid pro quo agreement or providing X in exchange for Y, to which they both denied. Beauvais and Adams' attorney Alex Spiro argued that the request was very routine, noting that it was not opposed, and that these types of requests are often not challenged, as in this case. Beauvais acknowledged that charges could be brought against Adams at some future date as the investigation would be ongoing, but said that he did not make the request in bad faith. Both attorneys expressed exasperation as the judge continued questioning about the circumstances surrounding the case. Adams stated under oath that he understood the terms of the dismissal and he did not have any objections, adding that he didn't commit a crime. Judge Ho said he understood that his role is quite narrow, but that he would take time to properly exercise his discretion. The hearing ended without a decision from the judge. He didn't say when he would issue a ruling. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The Transportation Department under President Trump has revoked its approval of New York City's congestion toll. It charges drivers entering Manhattan below 60th Street. Here's how New York Governor Kathy Hochul responded.
In case you don't know, New Yorkers, we're in a fight. We do not back down, not now, not ever. I don't care if you love congestion pricing or hate it. This is an attack on our sovereign identity, our independence from Washington.
The Department of Transportation gave approval to the program under the Biden administration in late 2024. The Trump administration says it's terminating the program for two reasons. One, the congestion toll provides no toll-free option for drivers. And two, the toll aims to raise revenue for public transit rather than reduce congestion. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said in a statement, quote, New York State's congestion pricing plan is a slap in the face to working class Americans and small business owners. It impedes the flow of commerce into New York by increasing costs for trucks, which in turn could make goods more expensive for consumers. Trump commented on the termination, quote, congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. New York's transit and bridge authorities immediately filed a lawsuit challenging the decision. They accused the Trump administration of targeting the congestion toll for, quote, blatantly political reasons. The East Coast is bracing for another major winter storm, forecast to bring heavy snow and ice to several states. And a powerful polar vortex is causing temperatures to plunge to dangerous lows across the country, with one state breaking a record. NTD's Christina Corona has the details.
A powerful polar vortex is bringing dangerously low temperatures across much of the country, with North Dakota hitting minus 45 degrees early Wednesday, breaking a record set in 1910. While the storm moves east, AccuWeather predicts it will bring 6 to 12 inches of snow to Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, and Delaware starting Wednesday. The storm moving into the Tennessee and Ohio valleys is slowly recovering from deadly weekend floods. The storms killed at least 17 people, including 14 in Kentucky, where over 6 inches of snow is expected starting Wednesday. Kentucky is facing a triple threat: flooding, snow, and extreme cold. Governor Andy Beshear warned that areas already devastated by flooding could see additional snowfall Wednesday night.
Challenge here is the hardest hit areas of the flood could get another 3 to 4 inches tonight. If the snow wasn't tough enough, it's cold right now. It's going to get dangerously cold tonight and into tomorrow.
He said temperatures in parts of Kentucky are expected to drop into the teens or even single digits. He also confirmed that 220 roads remain closed.
It's also going to complicate our work on the roads, make it a little bit tougher, especially on ice. So you should expect, especially early in the mornings, for icy travel conditions Thursday and Friday.
North Carolina Governor Josh Stein declared a state of emergency Tuesday and warned that the storm will undoubtedly disrupt daily life. While they can't prevent the storm's impact, Stein assured residents that they are prepared to respond as effectively as possible.
More than 1,500 crew members with the North Carolina Department of Transportation have been pre-treating roads across the state and spreading 3.1 million gallons of brine. As the storm makes its way across the state, NCDOT is shifting crews to remove snow and ice. There are over 1,400 DOT and contractor trucks ready to clear roads.
The storm has created hazardous road conditions and travel delays, leading to over 500 flight cancellations and delays at major airports in Charlotte, Nashville, and Dallas. Schools have closed across multiple states, and at least 3 people have died in Tennessee and Nebraska. Among the victims was a Nebraska state trooper who was struck by a snowplow while responding to a crash. Meteorologist Andrew Orison said the coldest temperatures are expected to peak on Thursday and Friday. AccuWeather warns that exposure to cold air and wind could lead to life-threatening conditions. Those without proper clothing, especially with exposed skin, are at high risk for frostbite and hypothermia. Christina Corona, NTD News.
In Arizona, 2 small planes collided in midair today, killing at least 2 people. Federal air safety investigators said each aircraft had 2 occupants. The National Transportation Safety Board said one of the planes crashed near the runway near Marana Regional Airport outside of Tucson before catching fire. The Marana Police Department responded to the crash site. Last week, one of 2 pilots died on a private jet owned by Motley Crue singer Vince Neil in Arizona. In that incident, the aircraft veered off the runway in Scottsdale and hit a business jet. The airport in Marana has 2 intersecting runways and operates without an air traffic control tower. Tens of thousands of flights arrive and depart from Marana annually. President Trump has weighed in on his preferences for congressional Republicans to kickstart the implementation of his agenda. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
This Wednesday, the Senate confirmed Kelly Loeffler to be the head of the Small Business Administration, and the Senate's Committee on Health, Education, and Labor heard testimony from former Congresswoman Lori Chavez de Reamer, who's Trump's pick to be the next Labor Secretary. Her testimony solidifies support on the Senate Republican conference.
And so the pro-legislation would have actually made state right work laws illegal. It would have overturned all the state right work laws. She was for that. She did in the hearing admit that now she's not for that. And this is the question whether this is a sort of a deathbed reversal or whether or not she actually truly is for this. We're going to think about her answers.
But it was a Truth Social post by President Trump that took senators by surprise and changed the day's agenda.
On the budget resolution, President Trump has weighed in, and his preferred option is the House's version. Do you have any reactions to that? Does that change the Senate's dynamics?
Well, probably should. I mean, I would think that we'd want to get on the same page here. The president's made really clear he prefers one big bill, as he said. So I haven't heard from our leadership. I hope that our leadership and the House leadership are going to get synced up here, because really, I mean, it's the end of February now.
Senate Republicans, including Senate Majority Leader John Thune, acknowledged that they were caught off guard by the president's comments.
Ultimately, everybody, I think, is in the same place, that we want to be able to deliver for the American people. President Trump campaigned on these priorities, whether one bill or 2. I'm confident we'll get there.
The Senate was expected to vote on their version of the budget resolution this Thursday. The Senate's version does not include the president's request of extending the Trump-era tax cuts or increasing the debt ceiling. Democrats are cut off from the process and have little influence over the drafting of the reconciliation bill.
The big picture here is that they are trying to pass a budget reconciliation bill that will allow them to strip trillions of dollars in benefits from middle America in order to put it towards a big tax cut.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is expected to put the House's version of the budget resolution for a vote on the House floor next week. The House's version expects to have $1.5 trillion of spending cuts and $4.5 trillion allocated for the Trump tax cuts. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
How does President Trump's foreign policy on China relate to the current peace negotiations with Russia? And how does the policy of the second Trump administration compare to that of the first? Joining us now to dive into these issues is Grant Newsham, Senior Fellow at the Japan Forum for Strategic Studies and retired Marine Colonel. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again. Now, lots of headlines and raised eyebrows about President Trump's way of negotiating to end the Russia-Ukraine war. Given Trump's business background, is his foreign policy transactional, or is there a diplomatic element here?
Well, I think every foreign policy is transactional. The Americans do something because they want the other side to do something for them. It doesn't matter which president it is. Diplomacy comes in different forms. Sometimes it's very placid, takes place behind closed doors. Other times it can be more out in the open, and that's what we're seeing right now with Mr. Trump. So, as I said, it's always transactional. We want something. In this case, the administration wants the war to end so it can focus on the Pacific, focus on China. In terms of how it's conducted, well, every administration, every president has their style. And I think we're seeing Mr. Trump's style on display.
And what do you make of the backlash President Trump is facing for calling Zelenskyy a dictator without elections as negotiations for the end of the war continue?
Well, it's not unusual for two sides, even allies or partners, to have some pretty sort of raucous disputes. It is a little unusual to have them take place in public. Usually these things are hashed out behind closed doors. So we are seeing something that we usually don't see. But it is, as I say, it's not the usual way that such talks take place. But maybe we shouldn't be too surprised.
And zooming out a bit here, what would the end of the Russia-Ukraine war mean for a country like China?
Well, China is watching very closely. And if they think that Putin has come out of the Ukraine war ahead, that it's been worthwhile for him to have done it, that they, I think, will be encouraged to make a move in their territory against Taiwan, Philippines, elsewhere. But they are watching very closely. So that is something that you do have to watch. Can Putin argue at the end of this, look, I got what I wanted. The cost was, it was high, maybe, but it was worth it. And you just might have Xi Jinping say, well, if Putin could do it, and he only had 500,000 casualties, well, I can handle that. And Taiwan is just so juicy that he might be tempted to make a move. So you do have to watch this very closely. And it would be nice if this ended with Mr. Putin sort of being as humiliated as we were when we ran out of Afghanistan. But I'm not so sure how you would actually pull that off. But this is certainly important. And whatever happens in Ukraine, there's going to be a direct result, one way or the other, in the Pacific, in Asia.
Now, when it comes to President Trump's China strategy for this term, how do you view it compared to his first? Is this a continuation, an expansion, or something entirely different?
It will be different, but I think it will generally be the same. They're similar, I'll put it that way. His first administration, it had the best lineup for dealing with China that any administration has ever had, with fellows like Matt Pottinger, Miles Yu, Mike Pompeo, Dave Stilwell. Now, that was a rare alignment. This time around, remains to be seen. It's only been 30 days or so that the administration's been in place, so we don't quite know exactly who's going to be in it and also what the policy is going to be. I think it is going to be a confrontational towards China, and in that sense, it will be a continuation of the first Trump administration. And I think Mr. Trump probably knows he got burned several times by the Chinese. I don't think he'll plan to have that happen again. And I would note that Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, Mike Waltz as National Security Advisor, and even Pete Hegseth at Department of Defense, these people are very good on China. They know the threat that comes from the CCP and want to do something about it. And then you have other people who will fill out the administration's team, and they will have different views. Some of them thinking that there is actually an accommodation to be made with the Chinese Communist Party and that we can reach a certain détente. I don't think that's possible, but there are some people who think that. And then there's others who just want an all-out effort to bring down the Chinese Communist Party. And then there's others who are just surprisingly appeasers. So you get a mix, but it remains to be seen exactly how this turns out finally. But I think Mr. Trump learned some lessons in his first time around, and he's not likely to make those mistakes again. So one can be cautiously optimistic about what this administration will do. So it'd be hard to get a better team than he had the first time. But in terms of knowing the lay of the land and how to deal with the Chinese, I think the president was probably better positioned now than he was then.
Grant Newsham, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
President Trump confirming his administration is discussing giving 20% of DOGE savings back to the American taxpayers. He's also seeking to attract new foreign investments for the U.S. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. What is the president saying tonight?
Good evening to you as well, Tiff. So speaking at a meeting of business leaders tonight in Miami, President Trump confirms that there is discussion within his administration that they might want to give 20% of all DOGE savings back to American taxpayers and another 20% to pay down the national debt. Watch.
There's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the DOGE savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible, Elon.
And Elon Musk is also in attendance tonight at that event, which is sponsored by Saudi Arabia government entities. And meanwhile, DOGE, or the Department of Government Efficiency, is saying that it's cutting at least $1 billion in waste every day. Also published a list of government contracts it has canceled this week, adding up to about what it says $16 billion in savings. Meanwhile, President Trump tonight also touted about his plans to cut taxes for Americans, as well as to attract foreign investments and imposing tariffs on foreign goods to boost that income from foreign countries. And meanwhile, remember, this is a meeting of business leaders, of course, sponsored by Saudi government entities. So he's really talking to world economic leaders as well who are there. And meanwhile, President Trump says the message that he's there to bring is that America is back and open for business. Watch.
I come today with a simple message for business leaders from all across the nation and all around the world. If you want to build the future, push boundaries, unleash breakthroughs, transform industries, and make a fortune, because you want to make a fortune. Most of you have already made a fortune. I don't want to say that. There's no better place on earth than the current and future United States of America under a certain president named Donald J. Trump. I think that you're going to do very well.
And President Trump is also touting about what he calls economic optimism soaring inside the U.S., citing the examples of, for example, rising stock prices, as well as what he calls hundreds of billions of dollars of new investments coming into the U.S. Tiff.
And Iris, the president is also signing new executive orders tonight. Tell us more about those.
Right, so we just got more information from the White House about the new executive orders that President Trump will be signing on his way back to D.C. on Air Force One. The White House official tells NTD that one of the executive orders will be to end taxpayer subsidies for illegal immigration. Specifically, it will direct agencies to stop federal funds from supporting illegal immigration and what they call sanctuary cities. It will also strengthen the eligibility verification process to prevent benefits from going to illegal aliens. And the fact sheet that we obtained from the White House also says that it's estimating that illegal immigration has been costing taxpayers up to over $451 billion since 2021. And another executive order that President Trump is expected to sign tonight will be to, quote, shrink useless agencies. The White House provided us with a sheet about the rationale to delete some of what they call useless government agencies, listing some examples that they call have been, for example, outdated and not using taxpayer money properly. And another executive order that President Trump is signing tonight will be to, quote, rein in on government overreach and begin what they call the deconstruction of unconstitutional administrative state. And they say it is part of DOGE initiative to cut the government size and spending. Back to you.
All right, Iris, thanks for those updates. The Hamas terrorist group is set to release the bodies of 4 deceased hostages tomorrow. Residents are bracing for their return as the bodies of 2 children are also expected to be released. NTD's Jason Perry has the update.
The Hamas terrorist group provided the name of one of the deceased hostages set to be released on Thursday. His name is Oded Lifshitz. He and his wife were peace activists and regularly transported patients from Gaza to receive medical treatment in hospitals in Israel. However, they were both taken hostage during the October 7th terrorist attack. His wife was released during the first ceasefire in October 2023. She said this soon after she was released from Hamas captivity.
I thank you for coming to hear my tragedy and that of all my friends. It was hard, and I hope we get through it.
Their children previously shared their thoughts on the tragic situation before finding out that their father had died in Hamas captivity.
My father and my mother kidnapped on the 7th of October. My mother released, my father still inside. And I hope they're gonna come in the next deal.
Well, at least we will know. That's what, to me, is, we have for so long not known, that knowing will be in itself healing.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Thursday would be a day of grief for Israel as they bring back the fallen hostages.
The heart of the whole world needs to break, because here we see who we are dealing with, what we are dealing with, what monsters. We are grieving, we are in pain, but we are also determined to ensure that something like this does not happen again.
Hamas said that 3 other bodies set to be released are a mother, Shiri Bibas, and her 2 sons, who were also taken hostage by Hamas terrorists. One of the family's former neighbors shared his thoughts.
So Shiri and the kids became a symbol. I'm sure they doesn't want it, but yeah, I'm still hope that they will be alive.
This comes as the mothers of hostages kidnapped by Hamas were honored on Wednesday in a ceremony in Tel Aviv.
Keep fighting and praying and never give up hope. Know that we are all with you, and may all the hostages be returned to their families, just as Emily, my amazing daughter, who I still love to the moon and back, was returned to me. Thank you again.
Hamas said they will release 6 living male hostages on Saturday. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.